Where do I live? Where is this place that it's supposed to be spring? And you probably can't hear this, but the wind is roaring through here. The house is shaking. The awnings in the front are creaking. I feel like I'm in some tundra winter zone. It is like raining every single day, like 40 degrees. It's dark and dreary all through the day. I don't even know where I live anymore. This is like spring in New Jersey. My watch keeps going off that there's like severe storms coming in, this is what, April? This weird weather. What a bummer. This is like, I don't even know where I am. But nevertheless, the show must go on. So thanks for everybody for stopping in tonight. Again, this is another episode of A Boudoir Photographer. That's me. And my name is Michael. I've been a professional photographer now for well over 15 years, a women's photographer, seen it all, done it all. And one of the most common parts about being a boudoir photographer, which is you cannot believe how many questions people ask you about the process. It's important though, because we want everybody to have a safe session, to get the results they want, and it's a necessary part. And what you find is that there are just so many people with questions about this process, and sometimes they're not so sure who to ask, or they don't ask. And the bad part is a lot of women can wind up getting involved with a session or a photographer signing up, and things just don't quite go the way they expected because they just did not ask ahead of time and get the information they needed to ensure that they were going to have a smooth session and produce the kind of images that they wanted to. So here we are, just answering some questions for people. It's been fun to do, been good feedback on this. And so thanks for stopping by and hanging out for a few minutes. If you have any questions or comments, just leave them, down below, and I can see them. Instagram is weird. Instagram comments don't come right through, so every once in a while I gotta look over my shoulder and see what's going on over on Instagram. So I may miss you over there. They're not quite integrated into the whole live stream scene like some of the others. But I think I have 6 or 7 questions tonight. I'm gonna go sort of through them. They're just generic kind of boudoir questions, so this is fun for me to do. Hopefully you learn something. And it helps you if you're going forward and at some point in the future going to be working with a photographer. So we will get going tonight. So our first question is, hey Mike, hey, how are you? I'm super excited, but a bit nervous. What's the first step I should take if I'm considering a boudoir shoot? Like, where do I start? Well, this question is pretty much an entire show in and of itself. So I'll just go through this very briefly. Yeah. And then most women are nervous. It's exciting, and they're unsure what they're getting into. That's completely normal. And I don't really understand what you mean by the first step is like, where do I begin with this whole process? Or after you book somebody, what the next thing really to do is. But assuming that if you're considering this and you're just getting started and haven't taken any steps yet, there is a lot of work involved in this. And this is something we talk about all the time. And I have no problem repeating this over and over again because it is very important. And finding a photographer to work with is a difficult process, and it can take a bit of time. The number one mistake that people make when they wake up one day and, ooh, this is going to be a fun gift, I'm going to go out and get a boudoir photographer, is they'll simply go online, close their eyes, like they're pin the tail on the donkey, pick out a photographer, sign up, and then they're off to the races. People believe that all photographers are the same, and there could be nothing further than the truth. People don't mistake all restaurants are the same or all hotels are the same. If I told you every restaurant was the same, you'd be like, Mike, what are you crazy? That's the most ridiculous thing I heard. But this is exactly how people approach a photographer. They think everyone is just pushing a button and they're looking to compare prices, and there's nothing further than the truth. Another big part of why it's difficult is anybody, and a lot of people do, wake up one day and they're like, I'm going to change the world, and they decide to become women's photographers. You know, my joke is always 2 weeks ago there were an MLM babe, didn't like the way that was sort of going, and then suddenly they pivot and now they're a pro photographer. So people will put up websites with no experience, no background in this, and you know, just because you see somebody advertising themselves as a pro photographer does not mean anything. It doesn't mean they have any experience, technical ability, or anything else. So you can't take these things at sort of face value when you see or hear about someone being a photographer. It really does take quite a bit of work involvement to get in there and choose someone that is going to, you know, your session is going to turn out the way that you want to. And as far as the first step goes, again, I don't want to take too much of the show with this question because you really can just talk about this for literally an hour on end. The first step is really deciding how far you want to travel, getting a few candidates that are in that local area. And like I said, really start going through them all, seeing how much experience they have, looking through those galleries and making sure there's a diverse group of images in there. It's not the same person like 87 times. Going on their social media, seeing what kind of feedback that they have, or you do scroll, see how far they scroll back. If you're only scrolling back 2 weeks, it's probably not a good sign. If their newest photo is on there 2 weeks or 2 months ago, it's probably not a good deal. And then people say, yeah, but they're calling themselves a pro. Like, and I always say, well, if I knew nothing about playing the guitar and woke up one day and called myself a professional guitar player, and you know, does that mean I'm a professional guitar player? Like, how long can it possibly take you to learn to do that? Weeks, months, years? So that's why on the photography end too, you have to be really vigilant on who you're choosing. Find out your radius, jot down all the names, start digging into their experience, the quality of their images, and so forth. And don't even get involved in the money part yet. Don't shop by money alone. That is really going to lead you down a path that you're going to get yourself in trouble. But those are probably the first couple of steps involved in getting your start. And then, again, jumping down the line a little bit is talk. Talk to the person. Make sure that they're going to be able to produce the kind of session that you want, because, again, all photographers are different. Make sure you're sort of getting along with that person and you kind of like their vibe and so forth. And at that point, you can go ahead and then start worrying about money and booking and so forth. So that is a pretty involved process. Takes a little bit of work. I don't want to spend too much time on that this evening, but it's a whole involved process. And the key is, you know, I've seen way too many people and heard the stories of them, you know, just randomly picking somebody, and it's like, oh, my session didn't turn out so good, or oh, I wanted my photos to look like this. And it's not that people are necessarily in physical danger. It's just you're spending a lot of money, and then the experience and everything just didn't turn out quite the way that they wanted. And I've seen the results, and it's just bad. So it's better to spend that extra time up front and do a little research than, you know, be underwhelmed and like, that kind of sucked at the end of it. So I could literally sit here and talk for an hour or so just on that topic alone, but we won't. We'll move on. And question 2, I've got a tattoo sleeve that I love. Do photographers usually try to showcase things like that, or is it more about the lingerie and poses? Well, I don't know what you mean by showcase. However, yeah, tattoos now are fairly common, and if some people do have really elaborate tattoos, yeah, why not put a few shots of that in your album or your photo book, whatever you're getting? There's no harm in doing that. You know, if you ask, and sometimes I thought the question was going to say, can you take that out? Because sometimes you'll see people tattoos, can you take it all out afterwards? And they don't want that tattoo in their photos. But yeah, you know, and depending on where the tattoo is or what it's of or so forth, if it's something that's a little bit more involved, I would say contact the photographer or talk to them first and explain the situation to make sure whatever your idea is with that is possible. You know, but generally there's no issue including tattoos, stuff like that in photos if that's something that you wanted to do. So no harm there. Just bring it up ahead of time, have a little bit of a plan of what you want to do, and that's no issue in putting, tattoo photos in with your session. I don't think any photographer is going to have a problem doing something like that. So go ahead and give it a shot. Okay, and next, is it cool to bring a friend along for moral support, or does that complicate things? I think it'd help me relax, but I don't want to mess up the vibe. Yeah, this is a very popular question we've talked about before, and every photographer is going to have a little bit of a different policy with this. I have no issue personally if someone wants to bring a friend along. I get it. It's someone there, like you said, for moral support. It doesn't complicate things. What I prefer not to do is, once we start having photos, to have the friend in the room, because then that really becomes a distraction. And in my experience, it turns into a situation sometimes that I look okay, and then you go, "Are you sure I look okay?" And it goes back and forth with this, and then the friend's going, no, yeah. And then you have this kind of dialogue going on between the two of them, and you're trying to get some work done, and that could be really a distraction. But I have no issue with friends coming along and staying in the dressing room and that kind of interaction. And I think most photographers have no problem bringing somebody along. Again, just check in with the person that you're working with. Generally, 99 times out of 100, that's not an issue, and it's fine. Bring somebody along. It's kind of boring for them to sit around for a couple hours and not do much, but hey, that's what friends are for. Drag them along. Buy them a Starbucks or something. Okay, on to the next. How do you deal with stretch marks? I'm learning to love mine, but I'm curious about whether they're edited out or not in photos. This is, again, pretty common concern for a lot of people. And the one thing I always say is, now there's a couple ways to deal with this. In the wonderful world of technology that we live in the 2000s, there is this great thing called Photoshop, and they keep making it easier and easier to remove things you do not want in photos. It was actually super difficult to do a lot of stuff. People would always say, "Oh, just do," and it wasn't easy, but now things are becoming easier. So things like stretch marks, scars, or like I mentioned before, tattoos and so forth, and a popular things like a C-section scar or something like that, or if you had people who just have lost a lot of weight, there may be some extra skin. Stuff like that is really, in a lot of situations, easy to deal with and take out of a photo if that's what you want. Now, I have run into some people who want their battle scars in their photos, and that's okay too. So I've learned to ask as I go along the way. So I think that really boils down to a matter of personal preference, whether you want that in your photos or not. If not, I get it. It's easy enough to deal with. So like I said, the first way is generally it could be taken out in editing after your session, and it won't appear in the final photos. And then also some people are really self-conscious about stuff like that. And if that's the case, first of all, you're just not making those areas like front and center in your photo is the easiest way to deal with that. Or you can always wear like a robe or a shirt, which is really great on covering or hiding things that you do not want in your photo. So there's that next level of protection if someone needs a little bit more security about that. Robes or shirts or something like that. Ooh, my poor voice is going on me already. Can always be used to sort of cover up any kind of scars or stretch marks or something, but nothing to be worried about. Like I said, boudoir photography isn't about being perfect. Everybody has sort of issues like that. It's just nobody is perfect. Boudoir is not about that. There's no need to stress out about it. It's just about having fun. Enjoy your session. Don't focus on things like that, because in the end, they really, really don't make a difference in the photos. And usually what happens is afterward, it's like, "Oh yeah, you were right." They're worried about a little thing that's somewhere down on their leg, but that's how people were. And in the end, it doesn't really matter. And it doesn't really matter. Don't worry. We'll take care of you. Okay, next question. I'm kind of a control freak. You too? I'm not the only one. How involved can I be in the selection and editing process? I've got a vision, but I also want to totally trust my photographer's expertise. Well, interesting question. And as far as the selection process goes, typically that really is the customer's preference. And usually what you'll wind up doing is after your session, it may take some time for your photographer to go through there and do all your edits and so forth, but typically you'll get a gallery of images. It may not be every photo, sometimes it'll be blinking or whatever, and that is usually culled out, and you're just left with, a selection of images. And sometimes, I know in my case, you're taking more than one shot for each pose, so you're not going to see them all, but a good representation of everything that you went through. So you can certainly go in my case, pick out your photos. No one's going to be forcing photos upon you. And I think that's true for most photographers and how they work, because it's your session. We want the people to have what they like and go forth like that. But as far as the editing process goes, that's a little bit of a different story. And, I don't know how much input. Now, if you mean as far as, again, you missed this little crease or bump on my leg and things need to be touched up here or there. But I don't think a lot of photographers, unless they put something in black and white, and that's another thing, but are going to let too many of the clients get involved in the creative process, in general, as far as it's not really a team effort on that part of it. So I don't know. You'd have to really be a bit more specific about what you were trying to accomplish there, or the particular look you were trying to go for. But what I say is, as we talked about before, all photographers are different. So you may ease your stress there a little bit by starting with someone who is generally in that style and type of photo you're looking for. So if you want a really edgy type of, find a photographer who shoots that way to begin with, and then there'll be less for you to kind of adjust there. Don't go to someone who's taking primarily bright and pretty shots if you're looking for a dark and edgy, because that may not be that person's style. So as far as that goes, start there. But if you have some real specifics in mind, I would say get a few reference photos, share them with that photographer and say, hey, can you produce stuff that looks kind of like this if I come in and do a little bit of feedback there. But I don't think there's going to be any photographer who wants you sort of standing over their shoulder telling what to do as far as that editing process goes. So picking out your photos, no problem. The editing may be, but I would say talk to the person, find out a bit more about that from them, and sort of take it from there. As my voice fades on me in the stormy weather blowing outside, is it weird to want some photos where I'm laughing? I feel like my genuine laugh is a big part of my sensuality. And no, you would not be weird for asking that. And I always try to do, when I'm cutesy, kind of fun, because you want to make people look like they're having a good time. Now, if it's like some kind of crazy, insane laugh, that may be a little bit weird. But if you're talking about just like cutesy, having a good time, I think that's really great. And that's part of what I try to do, and I just don't want people to pretend they're laughing again, because I think that doesn't look genuine in your photos. But if people are having a good time, you could ask anybody. Downside with working with me, these poor people are trying to look like they're getting some work done, and they're like cracking up the whole time. So, but no, that's a cute idea, fun, cute, lighthearted. That's something that would just be really nice to put in your photo book. It would not be out of place at all. They don't all have to look like brooding and like sexy. It's fine to have a sort of variety of looks on somebody. It could be outfit based, or if you're working in a couple different rooms, you can mix it up a little bit. And that's always a great thing to do. Do not feel you need to only be like super serious in every. Now, if you're cracking up in every single photo, that may be getting a little bit too much. So I would mix it up, but no harm doing some smiley, cute photos in your session. Okay, got a couple more. Hey, Mike. Hey. If I'm looking for more daring or erotic shots, how do I navigate that conversation to keep everything comfortable and respectful? Again, this is one of these questions that is a recurring kind of a question. I have no problem answering this over and over again because it is important. And, you know, when you contact your photographer and you're using language, I want to do something wild or I want to do something erotic, those are relative terms that really don't mean anything. Because as I always say, one person's demure is another person's wild, and it's a spectrum that's different for every person. So the best thing to do is, I noted before, when you're doing your shopping, look through galleries, look if that photographer is producing images in that style that you want to do. Because the one thing, as you start to go in that certain direction, there are photographers who are just uncomfortable and they really don't want to produce images of a certain style. It's just not their thing. So the first thing is to check in. If you see representations of that work on their gallery, it's a good shot, they're okay with it. Thing two is, in that conversation, always bring this up in your consultation or ahead of time. And I know it's difficult to talk about stuff like that sometimes with people you don't know, but again, as I always say, photographers who have been in this business for a while, they've seen it all and they've photographed like most of it, so it's nothing new to them. But you want, especially if you're planning on doing something that's a little bit more intense, for that photographer to know what's going to be happening during that session, so they can be thinking about what they're going to be doing on their end and not be surprised again. And you don't want that awkward sensation there where they're really not comfortable. They don't want to do this, and that was the whole key of your session, to do these photos, and it turns out that person really didn't want to do that type of work. So it's just something that they have heard. And as far as bringing it up, just, you know, it's very easy to say, you know, like you said to me, I just wanted to do some shots that are more erotic, and here are my ideas. And if you don't really want to talk about it, find maybe some images online that are similar and say, hey, you know, I was thinking producing some images that look kind of like this. What do you think? And then open that discussion. If they're like, it's not really my thing, that's fine, thanks. And then move on to try to find somebody who does, because it is indeed expensive, and you don't want to go in and find out that person really is uncomfortable with that style of work. They don't want to do that kind of work. And again, don't ever assume all photographers are equal or are the same. You know, you got to go to, you know, this is the thing I always say, you don't walk into McDonald's looking for tacos. You know, you got to go to the place that's serving you tacos. And just because they call themselves a restaurant doesn't mean they make every kind of food under the sun. You know, so you got to really do a little work, talk, and make sure that you're going to get the kind of photos that you really want out of that session. Okay, I've got a killer pair of heels that are practically art. Can I plan some shots around them? Will a photographer do that? I swear they are worth it. Yeah, so this, again, is not a unique idea. So shoes, and nice shoes, have been a part of boudoir for a long time. And I don't know all the shoe brands, but I know women who, the red, you know, the shoes with the reds on the, I've seen plenty of women come in with these really great shoes who just wanted, I've had people just wanted photos of like their shoes. But they wanted the shoes in their poses in certain ways too. So I think that, again, is something that any experienced photographer who has been through this before will, it's not unusual, and they will actually go ahead and you know, plan shots around that, and they'll have some ideas of what to do. Or likewise, again, if you have some specific photos with these shoes, a lot of them are just lying down, you know, kicking up your heels and getting the shoes in the shot, or similar things like that, which are easy to do, but no issue. Yeah, and I've had women bring in like really expensive shoes. I had this one woman once who had like this really expensive bag, and she just wanted photos of this bag. It had like snakes on it. I forget what it was. Maybe it was like a Gucci bag. It had snakes, and it was like really shiny and stuff like that. She's like, we got to put this bag in the shots. I'm like, all right, not a big deal. So yeah, stuff like that is fun to include, and it's always good accent pictures in your in your album and stuff like that, especially if you have shoes or something like that that you really like. It's a fun thing to bring along. So not a problem. Bring them in and get your cute shoes photographed. Alrighty. What happens if I get to my shoot and suddenly I feel super shy? Do photographers have tricks up their sleeves to help women relax and open up? Well, yeah, if you're talking again about having nerves or so forth, or, you know, any good women's photographer understands that people are anxious and nervous, and it's not normal to take your clothes off and start taking pictures all the time. You know, it's not a thing that people do every day. So they're very aware that when people first come in, they're a little bit anxious, a little bit nervous, and it's like a new thing for them. So part of the skill of experienced photographers is that easing of tensions. And not only, this is where the complicated part comes, not only are they there to take pictures, but they're also a host, kind of, and they're guiding you through this process. And part of that is being able to assuage people's tension and fear and anxiety. And, you know, we always talk like the boudoir experience. It's like, you know, it starts usually with beforehand when you're getting ready, but, you know, makeup and preparation when you're in the session and going through all that. And you just really want people to have a good time. So usually any photographer who's been around, the one thing that they're really, really accomplished at and good at is easing people and having them have a great time during those sessions. So for whatever reason, if you're there, you know, and that's not happening, you know, the photos can suffer, because I always joke about, you know, you can take, you know, a bruise off somebody or something like that, but you can't Photoshop away people who are like really tired looking, or they just don't want to be there, or like you're saying, there's no way to fix that, and it really comes across in your photos. So photographer will really help you with that. You know, and if that's something that's a concern for you, like we were talking about, bring that up in your consultation. And also what helps, if you were talking to your photographer enough times before that, you start to build a relationship with them, and then you will be less nervous. So if you feel you need to, say, hey, we need to chat, or hey, can we talk? And even if it's 2 or 3 times, say, hey, I'm still a little nervous. Can we talk? They will be happy to talk to you, you know, and walk you through this process. And the good news is it's usually, you're not nervous after about 5 minutes. It's like you build up all this anxiety for something that really there's no need to be anxious about. And then after about 5 or 10 minutes, people are like, you know what? This is really cool. And then it's over. So it's really not worth building up that much anxiety and driving yourself crazy over, because it really is a good time. And you'll have a lot of fun. So I think that was our last question for tonight. I think it is. And I don't have my question on here for some reason, but anything else that you want to ask? I said, I'm always happy to answer future questions. You can leave them down on the YouTube part and the comments down below, and then I can sort of read them and put the questions in future episodes. The Instagram group that is on there doesn't get to see that, because that gets sucked out of the system as soon as the show is over. So there's no really way to leave a question on there. You can always leave it, DM me on there, but if the show vanishes, and I'm happy to answer them in future episodes. And again, this is really to help people know a bit more about how that process works with boudoir photography, become more comfortable, but most importantly, make smart decisions when they are choosing their photographer, because as we talked about again a little bit tonight, it's not that easy. It takes a little bit of work, and we want everyone to have fun, everyone to enjoy themselves and walk away with great results, and you will get out of your session, again, what you put into it. So we're here to answer some of these questions, because it turns out you're not the only one. Lots of people want to know these things, and it really helps them. And we want everyone to have a safe and fun time in their boudoir session. So That's all I have for tonight. I want to thank everybody for spending a few minutes here and watching this. Hope this was helpful. And I will wind up seeing you next week again. So thanks everybody. And I will talk to you next week.